The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of OLOS Media or its sponsors.
Welcome to From the Nest with Charity Jen. I'm your host, Jen Newmeyer. On this podcast, we have casual conversations with folks in the nonprofit field, so listeners get an inside look on topics like fundraising strategies and consulting tactics. Today, you'll get a chance to listen in on my chat with Anessa Rios-Ezeude. She's the Director of Annual Giving at the University of Houston. She will share the challenges and the rewards of transitioning within nonprofit sectors and the value of mentors in supporting her career growth. And Anessa will also share a very touching experience that you don't want to miss. So stay with us. This is From the Nest with Charity Jen.
So it's hard enough to get by in the world. On top of that, not being paid right by your employer and being cheated out of overtime, being cheated out of the hours that you work, it's not fair. And if you're going through that, it's important to seek help. At Summer Shorts, they've helped thousands of workers just like you and me to recover over $100 million of unpaid wages. Go to summerspc.com to sign up for a free case evaluation.
Hi, Anessa. How are you?
I'm doing so good. It's so nice to see you. It's like seeing someone in public media is like coming home again. I'm like, oh, home, friend.
I know. It is so great to see you, and I am so thrilled that you are joining me on the podcast.
I know. I'm so excited that you reached out. I mean, like I said, it's like coming home again. So it's so exciting to be here.
Yes. Well, thank you for joining us. So we have a lot to talk about. I am super excited for all of our topics.
Yeah, me too.
But first, just to kind of give everyone a little bit of background, a little bit of a flavor of who is Anessa, tell us a little bit of your background.
Of course. So, well, my name is Anessa, and I started my career kind of doing all things in public media, which I feel like everyone is pretty aware of. So, I did 7 years at Houston Public Media. And the last title I had was Director of Membership, which was amazing. I had the people, our GM, Lisa Shoemate, she's wonderful. And that was just a really great experience. And I started off in major gifts area and then ended up in the membership area. But through that time, I did on-air fundraising, I did grants, and I just kind of, as you know, like I popped popcorn, I did everything that could be done at a public media station. So it was really, really fun time. And, then I was able to get the director of membership position, which was really exciting for me. I was able to go and kind of look. And one of the things that a mentor told me before was, look and see when you get a title, like what does that mean for you? And I was super excited to find out I was the youngest woman and youngest Latina ever at the station in the station's history. So that was a really exciting time. And I ended that part of my career on such a high note. I mean, I literally the highest note. And I went into the higher ed space. So I'm now the Director of Annual Giving at the University of Houston.
So I love that you have shared so much of your background at the station because I remember when we first met through the mentoring program. And as you are aware that I've written about in my book, public media is a little behind on some of the digital fundraising practices. Mm-hmm. We met through the mentoring program. And as soon as you started telling me all of the amazing things that you were doing at the station and all of the ideas and the digital fundraising and integrated campaigns that you were working on, like I just felt like the clouds parted and the angels started to sing.
I just remember
it was amazing.
It was such a vibe, and like that kind of happens. And the mentorship program was so fun in that way, and that I got to meet you. I got to meet a few others that it was that bond immediately of like, oh man, there's so many great things that we're going to do. And I just remember, when you're like, and I'm sure so aware, like when you're in that ecosystem that is your current career, your current job or space, it's like you're searching out and looking for mentors or somebody to talk to about some of the work that interests you. And it was like finding a home. And you have a lot of those aha moments, like, okay, so it's not just me. I'm not the only one. And
Yes.
so that was really fun. So that was
Yes.
a good time.
Well, I remember what was really awesome about just kind of seeing your kind of skyrocketing career, because, every time there was a new LinkedIn post about something new and, a new title and a different title and a greater title, and then moving into a completely different sector. Like I just wanted to like, get my pom-poms out and cheer for you. Like it was just really amazing to sort of watch your, all of the changes that you've had in such a very short time.
I'm blessed. All I know how to do is feel grateful. I mean, really just so grateful for the opportunities. I mean, I come from a family where, I have, this position that I hold is just not normal. And I think for every promotion or career ladder move I've had, I've just felt nothing but gratefulness. And just that feeling of like, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad I get to do what I do. And then I get to love what I do. Like that concept of having a job that you want to wake up and actually do, and it's not a job, it's a passion. I think that, like, for my family, that wasn't, it's like you're working to put food on the table. And so like that second piece of that, like all I know how to do is feel grateful for that opportunity just to actually love what I do. So again, just so happy that I've had the opportunity to do it.
Yeah. I completely agree with that sort of, in fundraising and in the nonprofit sector, it's such meaningful work.
Mm-hmm.
And when you find yourself surrounded by people who are excited for you and great opportunities and the ability to really, sort of spread your wings and try new things and, different kinds of ways to reach the community and do different things, like, there's nothing like it.
No, definitely not. There's nothing like it. It's just been so fun. I think the change in industry has been really, really fun in general. It was always, I saw this like graphic the other day. It was like, it's so scary to change an industry, or, you're doing the same, very similar things, right? Multimedia fundraising is kind of, that is a thing in itself that translates any kind of fundraising, sector you go to, but it's still such a scary thing to leave behind your, what is it, like your birth industry? Like that's what I feel like public media was to me. It's like, oh man, it's it, right? Like I could, my boss used to joke, she's like, you got this, you can do it in your sleep. I definitely don't feel that way. I definitely don't. So it's, but it's those uncomfortable moves are so refreshing, and it just feels like I'm growing because it's uncomfortable. And like that being uncomfortable just makes me feel like, okay, I'm moving somewhere. I know I'm growing some skill. So that's good.
Yeah. So I had a very similar experience going from the human services sector. I was with a food bank in North Carolina for like 10 years and, had the opportunity to really just expand on all sorts of campaigns and do really amazing things. And the opportunity to go into public media came around, and I thought, you know what, this is like, let's take the show on the road kind of a thing and try something different. And I literally remember during my interview, it was sort of like the way that they were outlining the audience and the size of the audience, and that they weren't really doing any digital fundraising. I was like, oh, this is going to be a cinch. I'm going to walk in here and make $1 million in the first year. And nothing was farther from the truth.
Oh my gosh.
So I would love to know like what that was like for you going from public media into like, you're in alumni fundraising. at?
So annual giving. So like
Yes.
you,
Okay.
essentially, it's alumni. It's kind of the same thing. You have a various group of constituent groups. So parents, faculty and staff, friends of the university, fans of the university, alumni, young alumni, students. I mean, it's like in the way that public media has, your TV viewers and your radio viewers. I mean, you have these different constituent groups, and the goal is obviously to get all of them to really participate in that inclusive giving that you and I are super passionate about. And but same, very similar situation. So public media, or Houston Public Media, is actually part of the University of Houston. We're a unit. And so I'm a graduate of the University of Houston. So it was kind of like, I'm a passion person. So I have to feel attached to the mission to really feel motivated to fundraise and be part of the game. So for me, it was really exciting because I was like, all right, so I see this, opportunity, and it seems really interesting, and it's just going to be a stretch for me. And, the kind of the fun part was I got to learn, the interview I had, they really got to lay out for me, like, here's kind of where the program is, here's some of the growth opportunities. And to your point, I'm looking at some of the different, annual giving metrics, and I'm like, thinking of our campaigns, right? Thinking of what
Yes.
one email can do in a public media space with a matching challenge attached to it. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be great. Like,
Yes.
I know there's all this low-hanging fruit, and it's gonna
Right.
be wonderful. And I'm just gonna have to throw a match in there. It's gonna be great. Like, oh, it's easy. And I say that like easy, like, for any higher ed people going to be listening to this, they're gonna probably be like, it is not easy. You are correct. And I was humbled. It just wasn't. And I think for many reasons, right? I think the techniques are there and the strategies are there, but it's the donor behaviors, and it's reestablishing some of these patterns that you kind of nurture and grow in the public media space, as far as like you're used to them. They're used to matching emails and outbound texting and inbound call. And like, it's part of, a telethon, quote unquote, is
Yep.
part of the process. It's part of the culture of the institution. Whereas when you go into more of a higher ed space, it's more major gifts focused. So it's more of that one-on-one, take you to lunch, make the big endowment gift. It's not that same like inclusive giving culture of philanthropy. You have to build that. And so coming into the new space, I think that is the most challenging part, is like, how do you build that from the ground up? And I say that, but like every annual giving director, obviously anyone that comes before you just kind of takes it to the next level. So I just like taking the baton and like running it to the next level. And that's what it feels like, but it's exciting because it's so new. And I will say, and I don't know if you dealt with the same thing, but it's in public media, you do it all. So you're like, I'm over donor engagement. You're like, and I'm also doing some of the donor recognition pieces, and I'm also in the events, and I've also got the gift processing and the campaigns. And then you come into higher ed, and you actually get to focus on the piece that you want to focus on, because you're surrounded by all these experts in their field. So that part is the best part. It's made me a better fundraiser. And it's just let me really drill down and hone a skill. And that's the best part. So, I mean, like, like with anything, there's these really wonderful plus and minuses that you can kind of take from, but it's been so fun. Really, really fun.
Yeah. And so how long have you been at the University of, it's only been like a couple years?
So I've been at the University of Houston for going over 7 years, but at the actual, in the annual giving space, so actually at the university outside of public media, it hasn't even been a year yet. I think I'm on like month 9 or month 10. So I'm in my learning era, which I feel like I'm in. And I joke because, like, you're a lifelong learner forever, but really, I mean, every day it's picking up something new that I didn't necessarily know, whether it's a process or, and then trying to figure out what's the next thing. And it's just, I'm in my learning girl era. It's a fun time.
Yeah. I think that it is really interesting when you go like into a new environment, a new culture, you are trying to kind of absorb so much. And then comes the exercise of pulling, like, how do you pull all of these pieces together in sort of a cohesive way where you can start putting together your campaigns or your outreach or your plan, you know? It takes a little while to do that.
It does. It definitely does. And I didn't know that.
Oh.
So, like I came in immediately. I know. So I
learn
came
on the
immediately.
job.
Yeah, you learn as you go.
Learn on the job.
I just came in kind of immediately like wanting to do all these things. And I think it's natural. And I think that's a personal thing, but I was like, I really want to do this and I really want to do that. And it was so important for me to like take that time and slow it down a little bit and go, okay, what do I have in front of me? What can I do? With the team? And then what resources do we have and all of that. But I definitely came in sprinting and that was fun. I loved it as part of the process. But to your point, and two, I think one of the things that we don't talk about often enough in the industry is switching industry to industry and industry to industry and then building relationships in those industries, because I had built really good peer network, a reputation and peer relationships in public media, but I didn't necessarily have that in higher ed. So, and you're coming in, you have totally different colleagues and totally different team. And, you look at my resume and it's like, well, she spent all her career in public media, but how is this going to translate? Fair, but like it all does.
Right. Yes.
Every
really
single
does.
piece of it. Yeah. And different. Right. There's in our industry, we have still, the on-air fundraising component that obviously no other industry really has. But then because of that, and this so well, is like a lot of people don't develop their digital fundraising muscles enough in the public media space, but then other nonprofits and higher education is doing that a lot better. And the direct mail, it's industry to industry, there's different strengths and things, but the tool set, as stays the same. So for me, it was coming on, I think, was a challenge in that it's like you want to make the changes and you want to make a difference and you want to, do that. But then you also want to do it in a way where everyone around you feels empowered and like they're part of your movie and you're part, and we're all part of the same movie. So that was kind of a fun part.
Yes.
Challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree that, when you're coming in, I think that when I've made, job changes over the years, there is so much excitement because you can see so much potential, but at times you do kind of have to slow things down, do a lot of listening and bring the team with you in your, in your vision and in your journey.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a fun process, but
yes.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we had kind of touched on a little bit in the beginning about the mentoring programs, and that's kind of how we came together. And I remember when we had our first meeting, you had said that you had some other mentors before we, developed our relationship. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I don't even know if I said this to you. I was like, well, I hope that I can compare to your other mentors. I'm not really sure that I can, but... And it was also during COVID, so it was a little weird, and then things kind of fell apart, and I was like, oh, I've been a terrible mentor to Anessa.
You're great. You're wonderful. I got a book. I was happy with my book. And you were like in the middle of a job change, and you're like, and then we were talking, and then all of a sudden I see the announcement, and you're like, and she's going to PBS. I was like, look at her living her life.
Yes.
No, you're a wonderful mentor. Yeah, so I had, well, first off, I'm like a huge proponent of mentorship and those kind of peer-to-peer relationships in general. Of course, that one was the Public Media Women in Leadership program, which I really do feel like if you can see it, you can be it. And being able to see other, very strong women succeeding and powering through in their careers and seeing how they've tackled some of their challenges and I feel like my whole life I've been surrounded by really good mentors. I mean, or people that I feel like I can take things from and learn from in how they approach situations. And sometimes they may have not even known they were mentoring me at all, but I would consider them ones. But yeah, no, I had my first, just as a college work study student, as an intern, I had a wonderful mentor. Her name is Elena Giral, and she was just absolutely wonderful. And she took me under her wing immediately just to teach me the basics. Like I was joking with my current boss about like I couldn't stamp an envelope, right? It wasn't that awful, but it was pretty bad. And Elena just was able to kind of show me so many things. And then, I Courtney Lamb, she's actually my current boss, but I've worked with her for a very, very long time. And she same thing. And it just, Lisa Shumay, I now have, VP Eloise Bryce and Rebecca Gentry, and there's just this list of people and women, and I say women, but like it's just everybody, where I feel like I've been able to take from things and learn from them and see the way they move and how they handle things, and I feel like it's only made me better. And I just am a really big proponent of putting and investing in those relationships and finding allies and people who are going to not agree with you all the time, but tell you like you could have handled this differently, or here's where I think you could be better. And those honest relationships have been so important. And then on the flip side of that, I'm trying to do the same for my colleagues and people that are excited enough that they feel like they can ask me for advice, or they need help and guidance. I'm happy to do that too. So I mean, I'm trying to pay it forward in the same way that I feel like it was done for me, and it didn't have to be, and you didn't have to spend your time with me, and you still don't, and but you do. And I'm just trying to pay all that forward, because I just would not be in the situation if not for that. So
yeah. What I loved about what we had at Public Media is we did have that kind of organization, Public Media Women in Leadership, that encouraged those mentoring relationships. And currently, I'm with on the board of the AFP, Association of Fundraising Professionals DC chapter, and there's lots of mentoring opportunities there as well. But like when I think back years ago to when I was at the food bank, like I'm not sure that there was as much available, or you kind of had to seek it out a little bit. So the experience though is so valuable. So just kind of looking for where those opportunities are, because even people who are in different sectors, like yes. I'd mentioned that I just come back from, the AFP Icon conference, and haven't really had a lot of time to spend with my new board members. And the incoming chair, I had an opportunity to kind of sit down with him, and he's in a totally different sector, dealing with totally different, more on like the planned giving side of things. But he has like decades of experience of working in fundraising, and just to sort of be a fly on the wall and listen to him talk to other people and give advice. And, people are questioning, well, what do you think about, and he just has answers for, he's just like a wealth of knowledge, And I think that, that's not only what you get from sort of that, mentoring experience, but any sort of opportunity that you have for going to conferences, meeting with other fundraisers, even if they're in different sectors, like there's still that baseline fundraising approach, relationship building, stewardship, all of those kinds of things that are so important. And that's how I've learned over the years, is going to those webinars, going to those conferences, going to those networking, events, and talking with other people. It's so important in our industry, I think, to just build those relationships.
I agree. And I totally forgot to mention, and she would laugh at me, but I forgot to mention Melinda Phillips. So she's a consultant with the Annual Giving Network. And the Annual Giving Network is a lot like what I would imagine like PMDMC to be. Like that group, it's, really just this higher ed, and they have other spaces, but where they really master an annual giving. And she, thankfully, our organization, the University of Houston has invested in the annual giving program to where we were able to use this resource. And I have this person that almost, it's just the timing of things where I'm able to work with her and have this prolonged relationship with her. And I joke with her, but she's like my annual giving therapist on a couch. Like she is the most one. There's no way I'd get through it without her. And I say that because she really gets it. Like she understands in a very unique way exactly what I'm trying, a challenge or a celebration and a win. Like she understands. And I talk to her really often. I'll tell her, like, we have a lot of these conversations where I'll say, like, is this normal? Like, is this normally how this works? And she's like, that's normal. That's normal. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Here's what I would do. Here's how I would handle that. And I'm like, and I'll tell her, like, I'm so glad you're here. I don't, but literally all I need is like a little therapy couch, and then she can walk around and do the thing. 'Cause she's absolutely a lifesaver. She's wonderful.
Oh my gosh, that is awesome. Oh man, it is so helpful and reassuring to have someone like a partner like that where you can bounce off these, ideas, these problems, things that like, is this right? Is this not right? Like it really is. I know you used this word before, but it's very empowering.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
1,000%.
Yeah. So one other thing I wanted to ask you about that we haven't really that we haven't talked about is you are also doing a lot of DEI work with fundraisers and within within your organization and your team. So tell what kinds of things are you working on? That's exciting.
Well, so here's kind of the fun part. So in public media, I think we were at an amazing place where we were really taking this time to really look at our audience and go, okay, how can we impact and reach this audience? And a lot of times, Jen, and I'm sure you find the same, is you have to have the right people in the right positions. And some people don't necessarily agree with that, but I feel like a person of color and somebody with a unique background, a different background than what oftentimes is the majority, has a very different perspective coming into a position and can see the work really differently. So, in the public media space, it was changing the messaging, it was changing the faces, and it was thinking about the different campaign messaging. It was trying to look at things from the lens of inclusive giving. And it's not a controversial topic when we talk about, how do you ensure that your messaging is reaching everybody so everyone feels like they're part of your mission. And so often, I love this topic, by the way. It just really riles me up. But so often you hear things, right, from people and in passing who will say, like, well, we need to lower the ask amount if we want, Latinos to give, or we need to, they just don't give. And you hear that about people of color and young people. It's like, oh, they don't give. They just don't give. I'm like, I would challenge that organization or the group to go, is our messaging, is what we're saying, is our impact reaching that group of people? Are we saying something that resonates with them? Do they see themselves in our organization, in our mission? And oftentimes, like, the answer is no. So I think that's when you have to look inward and go, okay, what are some of the things that we can change and we can tweak? So coming into this new role, I'm a graduate of the University of Houston. It's one of the most diverse campuses in the country, a leading institution. It's a Hispanic serving institution. And so there's a lot of thought that goes into how we're reaching those groups. And, thankfully, have a team that's very mindful about it and how we approach it. And it's things like using faces versus, in your appeals and some of your fundraising, collateral, going away from, a tree and a background to, let's actually feature somebody that looks like somebody who's walking around campus. Let's use real faces, which requires more work, but it's important that the people receiving our appeals see themselves in the organization. And then two, I think it's just the natural representation of how you're hiring. I was hired in this role because I am suited for this role and I am qualified for the position. I then, when I go to hire, I do the same thing. It just so happens that my hiring pools are a lot more diverse. And I think a big part of that is you gravitate towards what you see, and it's the representation part of it. Just being person of color hiring, you automatically, your pool opens up. And I don't think people think that all the time, but I swear it's true. And your team's everything just starts to look like the world that we walk around in every day. So, and then it's just diverse perspectives at the table. It's not, it doesn't have to be forced. It's not, a DEI committee. It's more organic than that. It's just even the messaging, how we're saying things, the different subject lines, like all of that plays a role. And so that's kind of for me the first step is how looking at that messaging and then thinking about how we can be really inclusive.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that it's so important, especially when you're, as you had said, developing your collateral, developing your campaign materials, that you're bringing lots of diverse voices to the table so that there can be a conversation, about, are these materials really intended for the audiences that we're aiming for and the ones that we're targeting? If we're if we're telling the stories of certain communities, is that reflected in the stories that are in our appeals? And even in, as you had mentioned, it's not a matter of how much or the giving ladders. Like people give because they feel a passion for the organization. Like that is just the basis of why people give. Like they are, there is a heart that they have for the organization. So is that reflected, in the materials that you have?
And yeah, it's important. And to that end, I think that people think it's a bigger undertaking than it is, right? So, and you get like a natural hesitation. I've been blessed not to have that at any organization I've ever been in, where, I mean, I think down to like, my boss, her name is Courtney, but she's very, even when it comes to like being impaired in a different way, or making sure like you're accessible, and how are you meeting those requirements, and it's the online experience. What does that look like? Can everyone give online? Is it inclusive for everybody? And it's just such a forefront. It's always at the forefront of what we're doing, and I think that's a big step. And so, if anything, I hear a lot of smaller organizations, that the first thing to say is like, well, we can't. I think they automatically think you have to institute a new program that's going to be, well, this brand new program that's going to be for this specific group of people. I think that's a great place to get to, but I think just audit what you're doing currently. Look at your collateral, look at your communication pieces, look at the team around you, and it will help you start to figure some things out. It just, and those things can be changed really quickly.
Yeah, yeah. Even, it's even looking at your website, looking at we talk a lot in digital fundraising about user journeys, but using those lenses within the user journeys as you're going to your homepage, as you're clicking onto, the support page or the program page, like what is the language there? What are the visuals? And even to your point of like accessibility online, do you have alt tags, do you, like those kinds of things for screen readers, like all of these things kind of come into play. And so yes, it does take a little bit more time to audit those materials, but it is such a valuable investment.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. So Anessa, oh my gosh, I feel like we could talk forever.
I know. At the beginning, I was like, whew, I'm nervous. Whew. And then as we started talking about certain things, I'm like, oh, I love this topic. I'm so passionate about this. It's like so easy. Yeah, I forgot. I'm like, we're doing this. I don't even know. I'm like, what's going on?
Okay, so I have one final question for you. And this is just off the cuff to kind of, just get a sense of like who Anessa is. So my question is, what is it that you did last weekend? And what would be your ideal weekend? If you didn't do that last weekend.
What did I do last weekend? What did I do? So like this weekend, this past weekend.
Either this past weekend
cool.
or the weekend before, whatever comes to mind as a recent weekend that you did. And then what would be your ideal activities on a weekend?
What did I do this weekend? Well, I'll tell you, I celebrated someone very close to me being essentially no evidence of disease on a cancer scan.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah, so that was that. And I'm sorry, I have nothing else to get. I mean, I don't have a better weekend than that. That's the weekend of my life.
Yes.
And so that's what I did this past weekend. It was one big celebration, and that's so funny you asked me that. That is so weird. Yeah, I don't have a better weekend than that, Jen. That's the weekend.
I agree. I think that's probably the best weekend you could ever have. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, congratulations to your friend, and I'm sure that it was just such a special time. That brings tears to my eyes. That's wonderful.
Since from Friday to now, I'm drained. I was like, when I got on here today, I was like, we just make sure.
Right, yeah.
Cleaned up here.
Yeah, where's that cream that like makes your like eye, like helps with puffiness?
Exactly. I had like a whole cucumber just on my both eyes before our talk. Thank God, wonderful question.
Oh, that's what. Oh, okay. So, thank you so much for sharing, because that is a very special and personal story. So I really do appreciate you sharing that with our audience. And now they can also celebrate with you and your friend.
We're all celebrating Ned. Yes, we're dancing with Ned. Wonderful.
Yes. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so Anessa, how, if people wanted to reach out to you, learn, get in touch with you, what would be the best way for them to do that? How can our audiences reach you?
Well, you can email me at anessarios5@gmail.com. Or you can also find me on LinkedIn. I wish I could click the link.
I know.
But I'm online, and it's Anessa-Ezeude on LinkedIn. So you can find me there as well. But I'm a big LinkedIn person. I feel like I'm on there all the time, just liking articles, and that's a good way to do it.
Yes. I love going on to LinkedIn because, as I had said before, you can see sort of changes with all of your friends and all of their, sort of professional journeys. And I just love that.
Yep. I agree.
Yes. Well, this has been wonderful. Anessa, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. So delighted to have you on the podcast, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Jen. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Anessa is such an inspiration. I just love her work as a woman of color to ensure representation within the organization. And, her creative energy is just infectious. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you'd like more nonprofit fundraising resources, visit my website at charitygen.com, where you can sign up for my monthly newsletter, access free guides, and learn more about my book, The Insider's Guide to Online Fundraising. This has been From the Nest, where fundraising takes flight. Thanks for listening.
This episode was produced by Olas Media Network in San Diego, California. Jessica Garcia serves as General Manager. Lena Alvarez is Associate Producer. Elia Ramos is Creative Director. JC Polk is Executive Producer and Founding Partner. And Chad Peace is our President and Founding Partner. Thank you for listening.
Olas Media.